Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of History You Didn't Know But Should. I'm Ray.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're taking a journey in a slightly different direction, but I think it's a direction that our listeners will find interesting, and that is the impact of AI, that is artificial intelligence, on education. And Chris, you know, AI is here and its influence and its presence in our daily lives, including in the lives of kids in the classroom, K through 12, university, college, whatever. It's not going anywhere. Its presence is going to be here for the rest of our lives. So the question is, what do we do about it?
The reality is that anything and everything that we begin to become involved with will have some sort of AI. Imagine just going to Bojangles and ordering. There is an aspect of artificial intelligence that is right there. You think about, I want to lose weight. Well, instead of reading a book or reading a magazine, you can go to Chat GPT and it can draw up a significant weight loss plan for you. And so I think, and I look forward to our speaker today, because one of the things that we have to identify is, knowing that it is here, how do we allow it to blend into our lives without compromising our lives? And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I think it's going to be very eye-opening to us and to our listeners, and hopefully point us in ways in which we can celebrate the use of AI to be able to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Our guest today is Dr. Tim Stafford. Dr. Stafford is currently the Director of Graduate Online Academic Affairs and Director of Instructional Design and Online Instruction, and the Program Director for the Master of Science in Instructional Design and Technology at St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida. So he holds a lot of different chairs, I guess we could say. But this discussion is very good, and we hope our listeners will enjoy it and take something away from it. In our next episode, we'll get right back to the history, but here we're going to be talking about how AI is affecting education, including history education, and we hope you enjoy it. Okay, so welcome to the show, Dr. Stafford. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I don't know if the weather in North Carolina is anything like the weather in Florida, but it's been pretty cold.
It has been. We just unburied ourselves from about 7 inches of snow here.
Well, we don't have that. Here, cold is anything lower than about 50 degrees.
Yeah.
That's when we start, taking hostages down here.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yep. That's when the iguanas start to freeze
Yeah.
and fall out of the trees.
They
That's
start
the
falling out of the
yeah,
trees.
yeah.
Have you seen that before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wild. I live in Central Florida, but the university where I teach, I have to go to is in Miami. So obviously I teach online, but I have to travel 3 or 4 or 5 times a year for meetings or whatever and commencement. And so I have been there in the winter when it was cold and they were falling out of the trees. It is a wild. It is kind of wild.
That'd be very scary, it would seem to me. Just very, very like, oh no, what's going on here?
Well, walking around campus and having iguanas walking around is kind of something you have to get used to anyway. I mean, it's just, it's just kind of it's an odd
Yeah.
thing anyway.
Yeah.
And peacocks and other things,
We've had bears on our campus, but I think that's the most exotic thing we've had walking around out here. So,
Well, yeah. I mean, we live in their world, I guess.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, Dr. Stafford, I thought we'd go ahead and get started. We're talking, of course, today about AI in education. And I think all of us know, our listeners know that it's here. It's not one of those things. AI is not one of those things that's coming. It's one of those things that is here. And it's going to be here for from this point forward. And I think it's just how we address AI in education and the impact it's going to have. So, Dr. Stafford, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, what drew you to AI, and we'll just sort of go from there.
Sure. So in about 2022, early 2023, I started hearing about from my colleagues. We're getting robot generated essays. That's kind of how it started. And I thought, And to be honest, be transparent with you all, I said, no, you're not. That's not happening. And I'd been following machine learning and artificial intelligence for quite some time. And I thought, I don't think that's what's happening. And then all of a sudden, of course, they launched the open AI infrastructure, which is the ChatGPT. But most people would know that as ChatGPT. And it kind of got out there, and I started looking at it, and I thought, wow, they actually did this. They actually, because they'd been talking about it for some time, releasing this into a more public forum, and there'd been a lot of back and forth about whether that's a good idea, would it become salient, all these things that are still being talked about. But OpenAI just pulled the trigger, ripped the band-aid off, however you want to look at it, and they did it. And so whether or not those early folks that's actually what was happening or not, I'm still not convinced that was totally what was happening back then. But certainly after that, it began. And so somewhere in that early part of 2023 is when I started to get them for the courses I was teaching. I started to get them. And back in those days, of course, it wasn't nearly as elegant as it is now. And so it was pretty easy to figure out that this is some pretty stilted language. This is not exactly what it looked like. And I have an old mentor of mine. He's been around for a long time. He's mentored me in business and thought leadership. And he always said to me something. He has always said something to me, and that is that if people are running away from something, you should run toward it because there's probably an opportunity. And so, but it might be short lived. So you got to do it fast. And so I kind of ran toward what this was, started to kind of embrace it. Everybody was running around kind of like afraid. They were chicken littling a little bit. And everybody was really mostly focused at that very moment on what are the algorithm catchers going to do to catch this cheating, that kind of like that was kind of their focus. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to let them work that out, and I'm going to run toward it and see what happens. And that's when I realized that as I started to actually use it myself, and I started to just, I mean, for the lack of a better term, play around with it, I realized, man, there's a real opportunity here for especially instructional design and course development. And what I recognized very early on is that this could help us with a very real problem that we have when we're designing courses, especially when we're using subject matter experts. This could really help us to get away from or help mitigate what I call white page syndrome, which a lot of times, you get an SME who might know a whole lot about botany. I mean, this is a maybe an award-winning botanist. But if you give them a blank piece of paper and say, okay, well, we need a skeleton of a course for Botany 101, they're like, okay, where do I start? And so I started to think, well, maybe there's an opportunity here for us to not replace the human, but actually to support course development. And that's kind of where I got started, was this idea of white page mitigation and how to support instructional design and support SMEs and faculty members who are already teaching a lot of classes, and they're being asked to design these courses. And of course, I've had the privilege of designing well over 1,000 courses in different areas, from K-12 to higher ed to industrial and corporate coursework in my career. So I've seen all these problems, and I know kind of where the low-hanging fruit was. So I said, well, why don't I learn more about how this works? And so I started to do it. Well, I when I got to a certain point, I actually called my mentor at the time, and I said, I want to show you something. I know you're not going to know what you're looking at as far as, what it is, but I want you to see the idea. And so I put him on a Zoom call, and I showed him what I was working on. And he says, you have to write a book about that right now. You have to stop everything you're doing, and you have to get something out there right now about this. And so I then did that. I stopped what I was doing, and I wrote my first book, which I published in July of 2023, which really talked about the idea behind ChatGPT, LLMs, prompt engineering, and how it could help with course innovation. And so that's really where I began. And what I was not expecting, here's what I was expecting. I was expecting to employ it with our instructional design team at the university. I was expecting to use it myself with my clients that I have corporate clients. I was expecting to use it there, get my team on board with it. What I was not expecting was it to blow up in the way that it did, as far as now I suddenly found myself becoming the person who was giving talk after talk after talk, not only about the innovative cycle that we could see in course development with that industry, especially in learning and development, but also where I was shoved right into the mouth of the dragon as far as AI ethics. And so that's when I began to write my second book, which I published, called um, Unboxed, the AI Unboxed, which is the idea that I launched the idea of the HI-HO framework, which the HI-HO framework stands for the human input. The dash is the work of the AI, and then human oversight or human output, human oversight. The idea is that framework makes it so that as we use it, we're keeping the dignity of the human, in the sense that we're not replacing humans with this stuff. We're actually, so this is all supportive. It's supportive. It's for efficiency. Yes. It's for it. I think in a lot of ways it can produce better materials, especially when it comes to course development. And so since then, I've been able to speak at very large conventions, small conventions, very specific groups of people, um, plus lots of corporate events. Have many corporate clients, including some larger university clients that just want me to show their folks how to use that. I'm currently developing a course right now for corporate and higher education professionals, learning professionals, on how to actually build agents, how to build an agent that can do a specific thing. Because now we're at a place now, since 2023, now we're at a place where we're employing agents inside of coursework. I just wrote a course where we're employed an agent that acts as a client for a consulting course. And so the students have this back and forth with the client. More and more people are wanting to do that. And so now I'm developing a course how people can make simple agents to do things, and all of it really, again, is just all in the idea of, if you can dream it, you can do it. Yes, but we're going to give you the first steps. And if you think about it, it's almost like the formula. If I would use it in a business sense, I would say it's quick steps to point three. Step one or step three. Step one is I got to figure out what I want to do. Step two is I got to figure out what that looks like, and I got to kind of map it out. And then step three is I could go to the AI, because I have a certain amount that now I know, and I can help, and it's going to help me. Um, Getting us there, getting us over the hump of, I haven't really used this very much. I don't really know what it does, but I have an idea. Getting that over the hump is kind of where we're at right now. And so there's a lot of people that want to deploy agents, or they want to build agents for themselves. And so I'm working on a course right now. I'm hoping it'll launch before May, that sometime in March or April, that will actually allow anybody to just take a very simple 7-step process and build a simple agent that can do basically one or two things. Uh, right now, I launched from all of this. I launched an AI lab that now I have programmers, and We've developed over 100 agents now that do all sorts of different things for all different people. They're very complicated. They have very complicated infrastructures and training pieces, but it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that the average person can actually get the AI to do things to support them. And that's kind of the phase that we're in now. And I think one of the things we had to do is we had to get to a place where we understand the complexity of it. We're in no way at a machine learning place, but we understand the complexities to a point with generative AI and LLMs, that we understand it now. So now that we can actually start to engage with the average user and say, hey, we can help you up your game. And especially educators and SMEs, people that are trainers, corporate trainers, people that can use these tools for a really great understanding. And right now, we're seeing at our university a you know when we work with folks, we see a 30% all day long, a 30% increase in efficiency in just developing courses. And so, and it's just because I really think it's because we're just helping to take away some of these pinch points. So anyway, I know that was kind of a long winded answer, but that's kind of where I got started and where I find myself now.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And, what I really liked is how you talked about your mentor saying you've got to stop everything you're doing right now. This is that moment because AI, while people knew about it and talked about it, heard about it, it seems that it just jumped right there. And there it was. And now it has morphed into this just huge machine, if you will. And so I'm curious when we start looking at the educational aspect. And I guess the question I want to say is now that AI can perform everyday tasks and can, whether in the classroom or at the home or in the business, what does authentic learning look like now when
Mhm.
AI can basically do anything? How are we able to have an understanding of what authentic learning is?
Well, so I would, the way I would answer that question is the way I answer it when I'm talking to faculty that are now or corporate clients that are developing coursework. So now we have to ask ourselves the question: what is it that the human is actually the most valuable still able to do? Now, that probably has changed from what we would have answered even a year ago, and it's going to change again in the next year or two. But I think the biggest question we have to ask ourselves is what is it from our position, what is it that now I can use the AI for to free myself up to do the thing that the AI really isn't going to do very well unless it becomes salient. So like for instance, um, nuanced nuanced understanding of data analysis. I mean, you know, forensic analysis, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of human need for that. There's going to be a lot of human need still in academics. There's still going to be human need really to write articles that actually um, write and peer review articles that are going to keep pushing the envelopes of things. Because I think one thing people have to understand is that although AI can perform functions, the AI at this point right now, the AI is not thinking anything. It's only responding. It's an algorithm. So it's only just trying to predict. Now, it's a very good prediction, but it's trying to predict what the next four characters are. That's really all it's ever doing. So the more that I train it on information, the more I can control what that algorithm is going to pull out. So there's going to be a lot. So every agent that I build, it's doing all these efficient things for a company or for a person or whatever we're building it for. But the truth is, the human involvement in building that infrastructure is huge. And there's also an infrastructure behind the scenes of us testing it, getting feedback from our users. It's very software-ish looking. Now, it's not soft. I wouldn't categorize it as software, but it has that same feedback type loop. All of that stuff is happening. I can't just tell the AI I don't like the way this works, and it just changes itself. Now, there is a way I can do that. I can go in to the back end and say, we really want it to be structured more like this, and then it does change. It does morph. But the average user can say that, but whatever it has it fixed right now, it ends in that instance. So when it starts all over again, it goes back to normal. So a lot of people's frustration right now is that they can't get it to do things repeatedly unless they come up with certain prompts or, so now what you have is people who are, you're saving prompts in spreadsheets and they're using them, there's a lot of still manual kind of things. So my answer to your question really is twofold. Number one, from the academian side, what is it that we can have it do so that we can spend more time doing other things? Like for instance, I can give better feedback on I can give better feedback on assignments, for instance, um, because I can have it make sure that all my spelling is, all my typos are fixed, right? I can spend the time actually going through and making all my lists of things I didn't, that I'm looking at, and I can feed that to a machine that then pops that back out. But I still gave it to it, and then I vetted it, and then I put it back. So my point is that we got to make sure that people understand that if you have it marginalize you, then you can't, if you use it in a way that it replaces your voice or it marginalizes you, then you can't complain when you're marginalized. You have to make sure that you are still doing the human things that you do that really only you should be doing. It's not that it can't do it. I mean, I could upload a paper, tell it a rubric, and have it give me a score. I could do that. And people say, yeah, but that's just going to replace us. Is it really? I mean, is that what people are going to pay to do? Is that where education is really going? I don't know 20 years from now, but right now, no. Right now, we still have to have the integrity of understanding what our role is as an educator. Now, does that mean that I can't put things into it and have it spit out a better version of what I would have written with no typos because I'm up in the middle of the night doing my 35th paper? Yes, there's something about that that's okay. So that's the first part. And then the second part, as educators who are designing coursework and who are interested in the lives of our students, we have to start to ask the question, so what are the new skill sets going to be? And how can I start to how can I start to um, put together to invent assessments, especially assessments and activities that are going to now employ those types of skills. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is we need to when we go to these conventions, especially industrial conventions, we can go to a corporate convention or industrial convention of some sort, and we start to hear what it is that employers are looking for. We can then begin to put those skills into play. So like, for instance, I've developed a whole mess of tools, a whole suite of tools for instructional design. And, what I'm doing now is I'm the director of a master's degree in instructional design at St. Thomas University. So I'm employing those with my students very slowly. Because I can't just deploy them, because if I deploy them, I have to also teach the faculty how to use them. So there's a lot to it, right? But we're slowly deploying them out because I want them to understand that this is what the next level of instructional design is going to look like. And this is not going to, it's not going to be long before everybody does this. This looks weird right now. It looks like we're spinning on a real shiny penny right now, but this is going to be gone. This is going to be like everybody's going to be doing this in 5 years, if not sooner. So I'm trying to figure out what are those skill sets that are going to be absolutely necessary for the next workers, because you're right. The person that if you're looking at a screen all day and you're doing things like putting things into spreadsheets, you have to figure out what your job looks like next, because it's probably going to get replaced. And I don't mean that from a fear angle. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you can, I don't need to hire a person to check I don't need to hire a secretary anymore. I can put my ideas into ChatGPT and it can provide me a letter. So what does that person then need to know how to do? Well, that person needs to know how to do maybe instead of there being 3 secretaries in an office, maybe there's one that knows how to use ChatGPT. That's the first step. And then maybe that person becomes the office manager, because everybody's using this anyway. And so it just becomes something different. I don't know what that looks like in every situation, but I know that that's how the educational environment's going to have to change. Is we're going to have to be, and maybe I could say it this way too, because you guys probably understand this better than anybody. We're going to have to be faster than we've ever been before. It's just so typical, right, for education to be behind business by 10 years, 20 years. We can't afford that. We're going to need, it will marginalize us completely if we're not careful. So we're going to need to act fast here. We're going to need to get stuff in order. We're going to need to start thinking about this, get this stuff engaged. And this is more than just a marketing plan. This is more than just shiny objects. This is like, no, this is real. And these students, I just talked to one of the cities surrounding the area of the college. I just talked to one of the hiring commissioners who doesn't even hire anybody now as an intern that can't prompt engineer. I mean, it's part of their hiring process. So it's here. These skills are being asked for now. And so does that mean that in every history class you better learn how to prompt engineer? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we better figure out, how does this impact every single area, only you guys are going to be able to figure that out because I can't. I'm just an instructional designer. I don't know, and a futurist. All I know is what I see, and what I know about. I know how to I know how to intersect them. But you guys will start figuring out ways to intersect these things and say, um, instead of AI proofing everything, it's how do you AI integrate? Proofing is gonna have to be replaced by integrating. And for crying out loud, please don't try to outrun it with a tool because the problem is the tools can't keep up with the algorithms fast enough. These things are learning way too fast. And so Turnitin is they are scrambling right now. Turnitin and all these others, they are scrambling because they know that they can't catch it. I can write something and Turnitin will say it was AI generated and it wasn't. I can AI generate something and it'll say it was written and it wasn't. You can't even trust it anymore. So what we've got to do is instead of trying to proof out these things, we got to figure out how to integrate them. And it's going to change the way that we look at the deliverables from our students. Yes. But you guys, I mean, I'm not saying that you're old, but you're as old enough as I am to remember that there was a day that we couldn't do math classes with a calculator. That was considered cheating, right? We couldn't. I remember going to class where you couldn't print out a paper on a printer. They thought that was cheating. It had to be on a typewriter, right? These we're in one of those cycles again, except this time it makes even more difference than ever. Although the calculator is probably the last big one, which is probably the calculator and then the internet itself, as far as being able to look things up, and then now artificial intelligence. This is all. It all has the same air about it, which is, um, don't look ahead. Remind yourself about the calculator that now everybody has a calculator all the time. I mean, it has. I was just in a restaurant the other day, and somebody had to try to make change. The kid couldn't make change, and so I showed her how to do it on her calculator on her phone. I didn't take the time to say, "You Gen Zers, you're such idiots." When I was a kid, I had to do this on my fingers and blood. I didn't say anything like that. I said, "Hey, look, let me show you how to do that on your calculator because I know the tool is in her hand." And she said to me, "Oh, thanks so much. I never thought about doing it on my calculator." Okay, well, there you go. And so what I'm saying is that we're almost going to have to get to that point quickly with AI. How is it that I'm going to be using this? And you know what, you guys, it's going to feel novel and weird at first. And you're going to think, this is just novel. I just don't know why I'm doing this. But over time, we're going to become much more sophisticated in the way that we deliver this stuff. There's already I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but there's already a university out there that's trying to do it all through AI, everything.
Yeah.
And so it's already starting. It's we're gonna have to move this direction. We just have to.
Which, there's so much there to unpack, Dr. Stafford. But, sort of running off your last statement, that means in education, whether we're teaching history, religion, psychology, math, whatever it is, we've got to start teaching differently. We can't continue
Right.
teaching like we did in the 1970s, the 1980s. So whether we're talking about online or in a more traditional environment, what type of techniques do you think teachers can use to try to keep up with what's going on to keep these students engaged in an AI world?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to do is number one, what do you want them to be able to do? I mean, I know this sounds just really simple, but I just can't tell you how many times I read a course with an SME, and it could be a corporate course or a higher ed, and I go, yeah, I've read this course. It looks really good. I have no idea what you want to be able to do. So we've got to make sure that everything that we're doing has measurable outcomes and that they're action oriented. And then what we can say is, okay, so what are the tasks that are associated with that demonstration? And what's the hierarchy of those tasks? And then what are the progression of problems that they could come into that they're going to have to use those tasks in order to solve problems or in order to do the thing that we want them to do, whatever that means, right? Okay, if you think about those three things, then AI can help us generate practice, right? So like in the old days when we were doing, they taught you how to carry the one, right, in adding. Then they sent you home with a worksheet that you just had to do 300 problems of carrying the one. Okay, well, AI can help with some of that. AI can help with some of that practical, just this is how you do it. Now you try kind of a thing. We can build very simple agents to do that. But then the hierarchy of tasks, understanding what that looks like, that's from a course design perspective. Sometimes it's really hard to understand that. So sometimes I can put that into an AI and I can say, this is what I want my student to be able to do, given that they have no prior knowledge, given that they have this prior knowledge, whatever it is. Help me understand what the tasks are and what the hierarchy of those tasks might be. That's going to be helpful, because then you could actually put those, you could start writing your course in that way, that this is, if you have course learning outcomes, you should know what the hierarchy of tasks are for all of those and what that list is, so that you know how to write your course. And then the progression of problems could be actually something that, so how we apply, when I say progression of problems, a lot of times that's kind of what we used to do back in the old days when we had word problems. And then we had to try to figure out what's here, what's not here, what matters, what doesn't matter, whatever. And so then we can start to say, okay, well, then the AI could function as a lot of different things. It could function as a person it could function as an entity that comes up with a problem that you have to solve. And there's a dialogue that way. It could come up with a situation like in history, for instance, a situation that you find yourself in, and then you have to, maybe there's a story to be told there, or maybe there's some sort of activity. I'm really thinking off the top of my head here, but there's an English thing where maybe you have to write something, and then maybe there's a dialogue back and forth between. My point is, if we start to think about what do we want them to demonstrate, what the tasks are in hierarchy for doing that demonstration, and then what are the problems, what are kind of the progression of the things that are going to help them really apply all those things to the kind of scope of things that this might apply to, whatever you're trying to teach them. I can see AI fitting very well in both the design and also the practical implementation of most coursework. And you might say, I have no idea how to do that. Right. So what you got to do is you got to start to think, if you can get your tasks in order, then you can start to say, here's where an AI can intersect those tasks. And here's where, if it completes the tasks, it's not going to be cheating on the student's part, because then same thing I said to Dr. Carroll earlier. If I can do the same thing for my students that I do for myself, what is it that the calculator or the AI can do that can get them to a place that they're actually more humanly looking at something that really they need to engage in? Then okay, then that makes sense. Kind of like, if you were doing a really complicated word problem in math, I can use my calculator. So I'm not really worried about carrying the one, slashing the one, carrying I'm not really worried about that. But what I am worried about is getting all the pieces out and getting the information together in the right way so I can get the right answer. Whether I used a calculator to do the calculations or not is not the issue. The issue is, did I solve the problem? And if I solved the problem, then did it matter? Now, some would say it does matter. I'm saying that it does, that technology has come forward enough now that we can't worry about people doing stuff on paper in math as much as we gotta figure out. So we're gonna make more complex problems, because I think that's the thing, you guys, is that this is such a great conversation. Is that because the skills that these students are going to need in the workforce starting now means that they're going to be solving much more high complex problems, because with this kind of information comes lots of other problems. And so the first time that they did a MOOC, a massive open online course, just an incredible innovation to how coursework they had like 10,000 participants. Well, they generated so much data, nobody knew how to do anything with it. That's a huge problem. And it really started down the road of this just big data operations, where it turns out that once they started talking about it, everybody said, oh, all of us have big data problems. And so big data became this big focus. That's what I'm trying to tell you. 10 years before big data started, nobody really knew that big data was a thing. I think what's happening now is with AI is it's going to start to uncover more and more complexity in the things that humans are going to have to be able to solve. And or how they're going to apply these things, because it's going to do more of the menial things that we don't need it to do. But at the same time, there are going to be human They're going to be human places, but I think those human places are going to be much more specialized. And so I think that's what's important.
You know, I really appreciate the conversation. I really liked how you were talking about instead of AI proofing, we need to integrate. I think that's a
Mhm.
whole new way of looking at how AI can be beneficial. You also mentioned how AI truly still relies on the human being to be able to input the formula or the question or the prompt or whatever it is. And so going forward, I guess one of the questions that I would ask is how can educators today teach students about AI, but most importantly, how to teach them about AI bias or maybe AI misinformation, because we are living in a world full of information. We can get it at our fingertips faster than lightning, and yet that information sometimes is false. It's biased or it's misinformed. So how do we integrate AI, but we ensure that students, business owners, whoever it is, understand how to navigate around bias and misinformation?
That is a wonderful question. Um, so I'll try to make it short. It's not an easy question to answer, but I think I have a pretty good quick answer. Number one, students need to understand how AI works, that it is not thinking. I can't tell you how many students I talk to, and they'll say, "Yeah, well, I just ask it, and then it just thinks about it and gives me the answer." No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's making the most complex guess that you could ever imagine. It's a mathematically complex guess. And what it's trying to do is guess what the next four characters are going to be. That's what it's trying to do. And so if you say, what is the LA Times? It's going to say the LA Times is a newspaper because it's trying to guess, right? But if I submit that to the world of information and I ran that same question 10 million times, there would be anomalies in that. It would say over and over again, the LA Times is a newspaper, 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 newspaper. But then every once in a while, maybe less than 1% of the time even, it will say something like the LA Times um, is is the winner of the because it found some other piece of information out there somewhere, and that particular time it yanked it in. Okay, so the more open it is, the more that it has availability to information that it can pull from anywhere. Okay. And then the other thing that, so the thing that we have to understand is that the more that I train it on information, so if I upload all of the issues of the LA Times and then and let's say that on the LA Times in their byline it says the LA Times is a newspaper based in Southern California history, whatever it says, right? Okay, well if I upload every issue of the LA Times that ever has existed, and I tell it to only pull from there, now I could probably run that 50 million times, and it's probably not going to come up with anything but the LA Times is a newspaper that's rich in the history of Southern California, because that's what it says over and over and over again. It still might have an anomaly somewhere because somewhere it says the LA Times is working on something. But for the most part, if I asked it, what is the LA Times? It's going to tell me that byline over and over. They have to start to understand how that works. And then they have to understand that if you don't train it, then you are subject to whoever is out there training these bots, which training the LLMs, the large language models, which depending on who's using it any given day, there's information that's entering the internet. So with all the information that's being loaded on the internet, which is literally terabytes a minute, it's being trained on all this information. So if you don't train it yourself, if you don't know how to prompt well, if you don't know how to add documents to ChatGPT, if you don't know how to get it reined in, then you can't trust anything that it tells you at all, because it has an arrogance about it. There's an arrogance about it, and it's arrogant even when it hallucinates. So even when it says something wrong, it just tells you that's what it is. It goes, a dog is a cat. Drop the mic. That's it. Because it isn't thinking. It's just It's just spouting information. So that's the first thing we need to tell students. The second thing I tell students, so that's on the technical side. The second thing I tell all my students is, if I went, if I came to your town, if I came to your church, if I came to your club, if I came to a restaurant in your area and I said, I'm here, and I said to the maybe a place that you frequent often, people know you. And I said, they said, who are you? Oh, I'm Ray Shepard's friend. I'm Christopher Carroll's friend. Oh, Ray Shepard, Christopher Carroll, we love those guys. Oh, well, you shouldn't love them. Let me tell you, this is what they said. And then you said, and you would go, what gave you the right to say that that's what I said? And I said, well, because I know you and because I have I have a little bit of information about you. And that's what well, that little bit of information is skewed. That's not exactly what it's supposed to say. Da, 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 da. You'd be really mad that I spoke for you. And I tell them all the time, if you put a prompt into ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, I mean, I've used them all, Perplexity, and you say, tell me everything you know about this, or, you put a prompt in and then you cut and paste that prompt. So you put something in, it answers, you cut and paste that prompt. What you have basically done is you have let a machine and whoever is feeding that machine speak for you. Now, if you're okay with that, that's great until you want to speak and then you can't. So you are literally exponentially marginalizing yourself. And so it's not just about cheating, because this is going to get so elegant that I'm not going to be able to recognize it for very long. I get that. So, but if you do it to yourself, ultimately, when somebody asks you to sit down and write something, or you can't get a job because you can't put three thoughts together because you've been having somebody else do it for you, something else do it for you, there is a real problem with that. And so I really always appeal to their dignity, because this is a human dignity issue. Don't marginalize yourself, because if you marginalize yourself, I'll give you guys a really good example. A colleague of mine at another university, not the one I work at, but a colleague of mine, he told me recently that he has a course that has very, very large papers. And he said, what do you think about this? I've designed an agent that can take the rubric that I use for this really large paper. And these are very large. They're like 30, 40 pages. And it has a very complicated rubric. And he says, and it could just it'll spit out grades, and it'll tell me what kind of thing to give, and it'll give me all the feedback and all that stuff. And he goes, it really works great. And it's really, I mean, honestly, it's much better than even some of the stuff I would even have written myself, because, by the time that I've read 25 or 26 of these, I'm getting tired and all that. And he goes, what do you think? I said, well, it sounds to me like you're out of a job. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I mean, sounds to me like if I'm a person spending money at a university, why do I need to pay you when all I need is to have somebody build that, and somebody that I can pay maybe $25 an hour, run the papers through that, give it back to the student? What I said, and then what about the ethical issue of a student that says, well, I'm paying $2,000 a course, $5,000, whatever I'm paying, and all I'm getting is bot work back. Mm-hmm. Suddenly we have just terrible issues. That's what I'm trying to say. I try to paint the picture of this is not just a cheating issue. This is ethics that run way beyond that. And you're literally replacing yourself with a machine. And so then 20 years from now, when the machines have replaced us, you'll be standing in the gutter saying those stupid machines, but in fact, you told them to do it. So I think the two sides of it are important. I think the misinformation about how it works and what it's actually doing and not doing is important, because most people don't understand that. And then the other side is, look at what this is actually doing from a human dignity standpoint. And I think once you explain those things, then, to be honest with you, Dr. Carroll, if they do it anyway, I can't stop them from doing it. And right now we can catch it a little bit, but truth is, that we're only going to get better at using it. It's only going to learn more. It's only going to get better at the intelligence, the artificial intelligence that it has. And so again, if we can start to integrate these things, it's going to help. But truth is, I think the very first time one cave person tried to teach another cave person something, there was probably cheating. I mean, it's just going to happen. And so we can't really stop it. And so that's the reason why I say that. I stopped trying to proof these things. I just, cheat proof. I just can't do it. And now we really can't do it. So I hope that
Yes.
answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of need to wrap this up, but I was listening to you talk about how AI works, what it's doing, what it's not doing, and it brought to mind something that I've seen happen with it multiple occasions where I'll be working with it, and maybe I'm, you know, putting in something for it to proof or something, proofread, because I'm a terrible writer.
Right.
um, and it will say something like, well, such and such is not true, maybe a recent event or something, well, this person has not passed away. And it's like, well, yeah, they have. It's in the news. But it's still, even though it is, pulling all this information in, sometimes the information it's pulling in is not the most recent or even the most
Recent.
accurate
Right.
information. And so people who are depending on it to do their work for them, whether it's in school, whether it's in business or wherever it may be, they're not just simply letting someone else speak for them. They're letting someone else speak for them who maybe doesn't have the best information at its fingertips.
Right. And references, I see it a lot. Like they'll
Oh
pull in
yeah,
a reference
yeah,
and I'll write on the reference. I won't say you've cheated. I'll say there's a newer reference. Use
yeah,
it next time. Because a lot of times, yeah, there's a newer reference to this. I mean, you're getting the oldest references because that's what it can find. And you're right. It updates about last I checked it's about 18 months behind at any given moment. So,
yeah,
yeah. So if something got released 6 months ago, we can find it, but it may not. Sometimes it does, but not always.
yeah. I've taken to requiring students in essays to quote the book and then give page number, a proper citation. And you can
Right.
always, and I'm not, I'm not one of these. I've transformed my thinking to where I'm not chasing AI in papers anymore. But you can often tell because it will get that quote and the page number wrong. If a
Right.
student puts it in there, it'll say it's on
Right.
page
That's right.
36 when it's on page 101.
That's right. And the DOI will almost always be wrong. So if they're doing
Yeah,
something online, the DOI will almost be dead every time. Because again, remember, it's only trying to predict the next four characters. So it's never going to get that right.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's just a series of numbers or X's or letters. It's never going to get that right. So that's not, that's just impossible. So they don't. Now it might get better in time, but right now, no. So you can always, one tip is you can always check those DOIs, but that doesn't mean though that they didn't write the paper necessarily. And it doesn't mean, and here's the other big problem, just to hinge back on that. Most universities now have given their students access to Grammarly, which is a great tool, but it'll get kicked in by the bots every time that it got plagiarized. So this is becoming a much bigger issue. And do we not want them to use Grammarly? Well, no. But the problem is that it's getting caught in the system. So you just have to. That's why I'm saying you just have to start to say, okay, well, you know, um, send me this stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot to that, and so yeah,
Chris, were you going to say anything at that point? I was going to let you wrap it up, Chris. I'll edit this out.
Yeah, no, I really think that this has been a fascinating conversation to have, and I appreciate it, Dr. Stafford. And I think one of
for
the
sure.
things that individuals need to recognize, and I'll just reiterate this, you've said it multiple times, that AI is a tool that is something that we should learn to use because we are not going to be able to survive without AI over the next times of life. It's just going to be a reality of things that come. So we have to find the right way to use it, but also to make sure that the way that we use it is ethical and that it still represents the human being that is putting forth the thought process and thinking through the things that are doing instead of relying on a computer program, as you've said, that just is looking for the next four characters. And I think that's a great way to put it. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope that our listeners enjoy this conversation, but also that they will go online or maybe even use AI to type in your name and to type in your research and where they can find more information about some of the leading research that you are doing, because I do believe that this is something that whether you're in the business field or in the educational field, everybody is impacted. Whether you want to type in to Chat GPT, what's the proper way to lose weight by being on a vegan diet or a carnivore diet. I mean, it's amazing all of those things that are out there. So
Yeah.
I assume you know, where can individuals go and kind of gain some more information about you and maybe some of the books that you have?
Yeah, the very best place to go is www.drtimstafford, DRTIMSTAFFORD, drtimstafford.com. That's kind of the hub. From there, you can get to my books and my where I'm speaking, and also the lab. You get to the lab from there, and there's just all kinds of things you can get to, and it's always being updated. So if you go today and something doesn't work, that's probably because somebody's updating something. Just go back in a couple hours; it'll probably work. But we're always trying to keep up with everybody there. That's kind of like Grand Central Station. And then if you're a business and you're interested in talking to me, you can go to www.ru, the letters RU and the word institute.com. That's my consulting company. But the truth is, if you contact me through Dr. Tim Stafford, I'm all the same person. I work in the same office. It really doesn't matter. So you can look at that as well. So thanks so much, you guys, for having me. I'm glad to have this conversation. It's been fun.
Absolutely. I thank you so much for this wealth of knowledge that we've gained, and that I know for me, it's pushing me to want to go a little bit further in understanding how to use it so that it frees me up a little bit to be more effective in that which I'm doing.